All righty. Good afternoon or good evening. Hope some of y'all are going to be here with us live watching. If you're not, I hope you're having a good day when you are able to watch. I was very pleased. I've been trying to set this up for a little while, but my schedule's always hectic, and I've kind of overloaded myself. So our guest today, Mr. Benner, has been very patient. I mean that in the most serious of terms. Very patient with me. But he is finally joining us today, and he served in various capacities for gosh. Over 20 years, and we're going to get through a lot of it here. But just the big points. He was with Third Group a bit, but he spent a majority of his career in the 20th Special Forces Group and retired as a lieutenant colonel. So I would be here all night going through what we're going to be talking about, his units and positions and all that. So we're going to get into it and let him get it properly out this evening. So we're going to start off kind of how we do every show. First off, making sure the guest is doing well. We hope you're doing well today, sir.
Yes, I am doing very well.
Excellent. Well, we kind of like to ask a little bit family history, but before that, where and when were you born?
I was born in 1969, September, Baltimore, Maryland.
69.
Yep.
69, hot and heavy year, both at home and abroad.
Yep.
Wow. And did we always like to ask our Vietnam vets, who we predominantly have on, with them being the offspring of the WW2 or the Korea generation, you being the GWAT and a little bit before GWAT. Did you have any family military history in your immediate family? Father, uncle,
Yes.
anything?
Yes, I did. My father was 1st Infantry Division in Vietnam in 65, 66.
Wow.
And before that, I had an uncle, Edward Kwiatkowski, who was in the 101st Airborne. He was a glider trooper, and he served in World War II. And I also had a grandfather who was in World War II. He was Coast Artillery, and then got out and became a merchant marine throughout the end of the war and did merchant marine. And also had several other relatives in World War I and dating back to pre-Civil War and Civil War times.
Wow, that is a heck of a family history right there. And I hate I can't remember right off the top of my head, but we had a veteran on that whose grandfather was a merchant marine during WW2, and he shared a few stories that his grandfather had shared. And man, those guys don't get spoken about enough about the losses they incurred during crossing the Atlantic to supply the war is just god awful. Much respect to your family and your family service. That's amazing. Wow. So you definitely had a family legacy to follow on along. Did you kind of grow up, young man, school? I can imagine you're probably wanting to play some sports and all of that, but early on, did you know much about the military, or were you more concentrated on school or sports? Or
hold on a minute, let me plug my camera, my computer in. It's going to die.
Roger that. Yeah, we think we've got like a 30-year career, which is wild to cover. Some great photos as well.
Sorry I didn't have that plugged in earlier.
No,
we should be good now.
It's all good.
What was the question again?
I was seeing, young men playing sports, wanting to do a volley of other things other than maybe thinking about their future. But did you consider the military early on? Or
Yes, I did. I joined when I was 17.
whoa, okay
So
then.
I'm still in high school. I was a junior in high school when I joined. Turned 17 that September, and then by November I was already in the military.
Wow,
And it was an
man.
interesting story when our high school had a football game, and they had two paratroopers jump in with the game ball, and they had black jumpsuits on, and they had special forces patches on their jumpsuits. So I immediately knew that they were special forces guys. So I went over to them and talked to them, and they gave me the number of the unit, 20th Special Forces Group, which was no more than 15 minutes away from my high school. And at the time, nobody even knew it was there. So it was
That
amazing. Yep.
that is very cool. We've well, we've not. We may have had a few national. Well, we have Howard Sugar from RT Washington was with 20th Group, and that we didn't realize, or I didn't realize that the National Guard units, both after Vietnam, doing some really really cool training, and then during the GWAT, as we're going to get into, was doing a lot of interesting stuff. So,
Yes.
That's crazy, but also. It's very interesting because we had a veteran on not too long ago who was a LERP Ranger in Vietnam, and he was an Eagle Scout. And I'm seeing here you were gracious enough to give me your resume. That you were actually an Eagle Scout, earned the title of an Eagle Scout.
Yes, I did. So
Wow.
yes. And my son and daughter are both Eagle Scouts also. So I've stayed involved with scouting my whole entire life.
Man, that's something to be quite proud of. We spoke a little bit about that. That's a I can only imagine how much that helped you on down the line in the military, in various various things, both of course in the field and just being in a unit and working with others. But man, that and then to have your children as well follow in your footsteps and be Eagle Scouts. That's outstanding, outstanding. Um, man, you joined at 17, and what's the first path for you in the military pipeline here? Where are you first going?
When I first joined, there was no medical slots in the unit that I joined, the 20th Group B Company. So they put me in as a communications specialist. I was enlisted. So I went in as an E1 private, went to basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and then came back, went to high school my junior year, and then graduated high school and then went to AIT. And by that time, I switched to medic, and I went to combat medic course down at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And that was an excellent school. It was about 14 weeks or so down at Fort Sam Houston. And that was, I believe that was 1988 that I went down there for that. And
Wow.
graduated in the top of my class. I think I was number 2 in the class, and I got an Army Achievement Medal out of that as a E1 private.
Wow, man, that as we've heard from our various both Marine Corps having Navy corpsmen and Army Special Forces, and you'll actually get into some of that as well. But the Army side of medic training and the medical side of the house seems to be quite above and beyond. How what was the course like? What all was it covering? Literal combat,
Just combat
everything.
medicine. Yeah, just combat medicine. It was basically like an EMT course or early paramedic course at that time. So pretty much all the standard 91 Alpha combat medics went through that course.
Wow.
And then once that was done, I went back to my unit, and then they sent me to airborne school at Fort Benning, Georgia. And that was pretty amazing. I loved airborne school. That was 3 weeks down there at Fort Benning, learning how to jump out of an airplane. So it was really, really neat. First jump was out of a C-141 Starlifter jet. And I still see that jet, that door, and you just get sucked right out the door. It was pretty amazing.
Had you we've spoken to a few guys that had some experience in the civilian side jumping in some capacity, or just maybe wanting to do it at least once before going into the military. Was this your first time jumping,
Yes,
or
that was my first time with static line parachuting. I later went to did free fall school down at Fort Bragg at Rayford, and had all the military free fall guys, the instructors that would teach that on the weekends and such. So I did that
wow.
school down there.
That will definitely be one to ask about that. That is very very interesting. I know a few of the SOG men that were on some of the MF military freefall boards, or either instructors or what have you. So very very interesting. And I'm sure you probably ran across several of these men in your career.
Yes.
Man, wow. So once you get your jump wings and you're officially through airborne school, what's next? Is this AIT, or what's
So
next in the pipeline?
I did the basic training, the AIT, and then jump school, and then they had us do pre-SFAS, which was Special Forces Assessment and Selection. They did that at our unit, and they would assign you to an A team at that time. So you did on-the-job training, and then you also did all the train up for SFAS. So at the time before SFAS, we did correspondence courses. So I was enrolled in the correspondence program and pretty much had almost completed it before they discontinued it. And then, so I
Jeez.
almost had it done. And then they said, well, they came up with this new course, SFAS. And I was in like the second course of SFAS and went down and did that, and broke my foot on like the last day. And I walked the long walk back from Camp McCall to Fort Bragg on a broken foot, and got all the way through it, graduated it, and I was non-select after doing all that. So
Wow.
yes, yep. So it was pretty heartbreaking at the time to be non-select and to finish the course. I think we had started with like 300 or 400 people, and we graduated at like 89 people. And out of that
Holy.
89, I think only 50 got selected or so.
Wow.
Yes,
That's an attrition rate right
it
there.
was crazy.
I,
Yeah.
and at this point in time, is this um already in the 90s? I was
Yes,
curious
like
about.
this was right before, it was like 1989, 1990. So I finished the course, and they took me to the hospital, and they found that I had a broken third metatarsal on my right foot. So they had to set it and cast it. And then I came home in a crutches and a cast. And my feet were so torn up from SFAS that they would have to cut the cast off and recast me like 5 or 6 times because of the swelling and the blisters and all the. And I had an infection in the foot from the cast, and it was a nightmare with all that. And I finally got that to the point where my cast was okay, and I went to drills, and I was on crutches, and then we got activated for Desert Storm, Desert Shield. So my
Wow.
unit was the first time a National Guard Special Forces unit was ever activated for war. So I broke my cast off with a hammer,
Oh
and
my God.
I wanted to go. I just absolutely wanted to go with the guys. So I broke the cast off, start training again, and we went down to Fort Bragg. So that was like 1990, 91 time frame.
Now,
So
did they have any? I sorry to go back a bit, but in Vietnam, we've heard up until a certain time, you had to have a certain time in the military or rank or what have you. At this point in time, were you able to go straight into special forces without spending any time in the regular army, shall we say?
yes, I went right from high school into special forces.
Wow, wow.
So they, when I did my original interview, they were impressed. I was an Eagle Scout. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
knew pretty much everything that they wanted me to know. They would ask me questions and this and that, and they approved me. So I went right into the unit, and they put me on an A team, 228, I think it was at the time, and I was the medic on the team, learning from the other medic on the team.
And when you're when you're on this team, is this before you aren't selected and you go with a National Guard group, or is this the same group?
No, the same National Guard unit. Yes.
What is this 20th group that you're with
20th
already?
group. Yes.
Okay.
So when I went back to the unit, I told them I wanted another chance to go down to SFAS, and they said, sure, you got to recover and recuperate. So, and then in the meantime, Desert Storm, Desert Shield hits. So the whole unit gets activated for Desert Storm and Desert Shield. We go to Fort Bragg. So we go down to Fort Bragg, and pretty much everybody that's non-qualified goes right into SFAS. And I still wasn't ready as far as my foot wasn't healed correctly. So I did basically was like, I did admin, I did CQ duty, I did whatever needed to be done. I transported people back and forth. So I was just basically an admin person for that time that we were there.
Wow, man, oh man, that I can only imagine what it's like for you there with a bummed up leg, bummed up leg, and it's in a gnarly position, and you're trying to get it ready, and something's on the precipice, and
Yep.
you're getting ready for it.
Yeah.
So when it gets ready and you bust it open, I mean, you literally, after that, you've got no complications. You bust it off, throw it away, and you rock and roll.
I was gone. Yep. So I never went back to the follow-up appointments.
God.
So I go down to Fort Bragg. I was there for like 6 months. So during the time the war ended, it ended very quickly. So they only took a few of the commo and a few of the engineers, and they went to Turkey to operate. I think it was Operation Provide Comfort for the Kurds, and they only took maybe about 15 or 20 guys. It wasn't much. So during that time that I was down at Fort Bragg, I decided to do scuba diving. So I took a scuba course, did basic open water, advanced open water, and rescue scuba diver. So I knocked that out, and then I also started with free fall. So I started the free fall course when I was down there at Rayford. So I did that, and then the war ended, and they decided to send us all home.
Jeez, yeah. Wow! And is scuba school at Key West? Is that the?
No, it wasn't. It was the one at Cape Fear down in Fayetteville.
Oh, okay, okay, wow. Man, I've heard even some of the SOG guys talk about how difficult the Army Special Forces scuba school is. It's quite difficult.
Yeah, well, this was the civilian scuba school, wasn't it?
Oh, what? Okay,
it was not
man.
military. Yep.
So, that's interesting. Very interesting. So it's like the war ends very quickly. So what are you doing now to get ready? What's going on next here?
So we go back to Maryland and start college, and basically start to college and everything. And I was in college, I think, before I left for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And when I was down there, I got approved for physician assistant school. So while I was down there, my parents called me and says, "Hey, you got an interview with the college. They want you to come and do this interview for PA school. You got one of the slots." So I go to my company commander at the time down at Fort Bragg, and I say, "Look, I got an interview for physician assistant school, and I'd like to go home on a leave for 24 hours or so." And he says, "Nope, can't go." And I said, "Really?" He says, "No, we're going to war. We can't afford to let you go." So I said, "I'm not doing that." So I go to the battalion chaplain, and I say, hey, chaplain, I said, "Look, I need a 24-hour pass. I got to go home, interview for this course, and I'll fly up, do the interview, and fly back. I'll be back within 24 hours. So he went to the group commander, and the group commander says, "Okay, you can do it." So I get my 24-hour pass. So I leave Friday morning early, fly back to Maryland, get the BWI. My parents pick me up, go to college, do the interview for the physician assistant course, go back to the airport, fly back to Fort Bragg, get a taxi, get back to to Fort Bragg, and there's nobody there. They had a 48 to 72-hour pass, so everybody was gone. So there's one guy that's like packing his truck up, and I said, "Where is everybody?" He says, "Oh, everybody got a pass." And I'm like, "Really? I just spent like all this money to fly back and forth to come back." And they said, "Yeah, just go sign out of the CQ and you can ride with me back to Maryland." So I signed out, got in the truck, and I drove back to Maryland. So like 8 hours later, I'm rapping on my parents' door, and they're like, "What are you doing? We just sent you on the airplane." And I was back till Tuesday.
Yeah, I can only imagine what you must have been. That, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's going on then? What do you?
So I found out later, a couple days later, or a week or two later, I go back to Fort Bragg. We deactivate. We all come back to Maryland, and I get a letter in the mail says I got approved for physician assistant school. So I got in. So, and this is 1991, 92 time frame. So it was still pretty new at the time. I mean, PAs have been around since like 65 or so, but it's not as big as it is today. So I go to my company commander. I say, "Look, I'm going to PA school. Can I still stay in the unit?" And he says, "Absolutely. We'd love to have you here as a PA." So I go to the civilian PA school at Essex Community College, and then later it becomes Chicago Medical School, and then University of Nebraska. So I wound up getting a master's degree out of all that. So, and that was later. So I finished the PA school. I come back to the unit, and the commander says, "We love to have you as a PA. There's no slot here as a PA, but we're going to keep you." So they kept me as a corporal, as a physician assistant in the company for about 3 or 4 years until they actually commissioned me as a lieutenant. So I stayed there for about 4 or 5 years as a PA, as a corporal.
Holy cow, man. That is wild. That is wild. And as soon as you I can only imagine once you're now an officer and they're wanting you on and you're a physician's assistant, I imagine there's more school immediately right down the road.
Oh yes. I went to flight surgeon school. So I did that. I went and did that in 2 different time frames because they broke it up into 2 4-week schools. And then, well, before that, I actually, once I was a PA as a corporal, I would still go on all the teams because they were always short on medics because they didn't have enough medics at the time. So whatever team was going to different deployments, I would go as a strap hanger and be the team medic. So it was awesome because I got to go to Panama, I got to go to Central America, I got to go to Estonia, I got to go to Puerto Rico and St. Thomas and St. Croix. So I traveled all over the place as the team medic on a lot of those different A teams.
Man, yeah, you can't ask for anything better as a young man. Wow, I mean, you had it made in the shade right there. Wow.
So I did a lot of travel medicine. I gave shots. I did all the vaccinations. I helped with doing all the team medical supplies. I ordered everything. So it was pretty amazing to do all that.
That's outstanding. And I can only imagine, and especially as you get into your career when you're actually in combat doing combat medicine, I can only imagine the feeling of the rewarding feeling that you doing a successful job and doing all of the stuff. I can only imagine. This is wow.
Yeah. So I think about 1998 is when I got the commission as a second lieutenant. And I was only a second lieutenant for maybe about 1.5 years, and then they bumped me right up to first lieutenant. And then I was only a first lieutenant for maybe about a year or so, and then I went right to captain. So because I had all the previous years as a PA, so they took that into consideration when they promoted me. So I made captain pretty quickly, and I turned down major once during that time to stay as a captain. So I stayed a captain for I think 8.5 years.
Wow.
Yep.
What made you want to turn down the major?
Because the higher your rank, the less time you can stay with the teams.
Okay.
So one of the old captains had told me that. He says, you don't want to get promoted too quick because then they force you out. And
Mm.
that's what happened when I got lieutenant colonel. I had to leave because I couldn't outrank the company commander, who was a major.
Wow,
So,
man.
yep. So I stayed a captain for about 8.5 years.
Man,
Uh,
and at this time, are you going in '98? It says here you go to the Army Medical Officer Basic Course at Sam Houston.
yes, I had to do that, and that was pretty much a joke because I had been in the military for like 10 years, 11 years, and I get down to Fort Sam Houston. There's one other guy down there who was a SF guy, and we pretty much hung together. And we'd sit in the back of the room and pretty much sleep or goof off or whatever. And the one day they take us to the clothing sales, and they want us to get uniforms and all of our rank and stuff. So there's this lieutenant colonel there who's an anesthesiologist, and he gets his uniform set up, and he has a colonel, full-bird colonel, and a lieutenant bar because he's a lieutenant colonel sewn on his
Ah,
uniform.
oh,
No, it's just that's the kind of people that they were, and they were just giving rank like that because he was a lieutenant colonel, a lieutenant bar, and a colonel.
that's right out of MASH with
It was
radio as a lieutenant
absolutely,
general
yeah, lieutenant
or
captain, corporal captain.
yeah, there you go. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Oh,
So I finished that basic officer basic course, went back to Maryland, and went right back to the Special Forces unit. So this is probably like, I think that was like 98 or 99. So, yep. And then I think during that time I went to Cephalic also. I think after that one of the teams had a medic, and the medic dropped out like a week before the course. And they called me and they said, hey, Doc, do you want to go down with this team? If not, they're going to have to cancel their slot for Cephalic, which is Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat Course, which is the shooting school. So I said, absolutely, I will go in a second. So I went down with that team as their medic, and I got to shoot and do all the courses and everything like all the guys did down at that team for that school. It was an excellent school. I was down at Fort McClellan in Pelham Range, and we had a great time. Shot something like 18,000 rounds per person. It was
dang.
crazy. I mean, we would do transition drills from the M4 to the M9, and we'd blow doors and do room clearing and helicopter assaults. And so it was like 3 weeks of nothing but shooting and activities. So it was pretty cool.
That sounds pretty heavy duty.
Yep.
And when did you say you went through this course?
I think that was sometime right before, probably like 2000 or so, I think it was, or so it was before we got activated for Afghanistan.
Okay, that's what I was just fixing to say.
Yeah.
We're getting around the time stuff starts going bad, shall we say,
Yes.
for America or war wise. Where where were you at when 9/11 took place?
I was in the hospital doing surgery. I think I was doing a gallbladder or appendix or something. And they came in the operating room and they said that after this case, we're not going to do any more surgeries because the hospital's going to be on alert. So they canceled all the other surgeries for the rest of the day. We all went into the break room and we were watching the TV. And I actually saw the second tower collapse at that time. Because we're right here in Baltimore, and it was they didn't know what was going on because the one plane crashed into the Pentagon, the other one crashed in Pennsylvania, so and New York, so they didn't know. So they put everybody on alert. And then I think I got home that night, and the next day we got our phone call from our National Guard unit and said that we're probably going to get activated. So, yep.
Wow. So it was quick moving for you then.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you guys get that call up, what takes place for 20th group to start getting ready?
Well, I think the first units went. I think it was either first or third battalion went first, And they went and came back, and a couple of those guys actually came back to our unit, gave us the heads up on what was going on. And then we went as the second iteration in 2002 into 2003. So I think the Twin Towers came down in 2001, like that September. So they had the active duty teams that went in November into the beginning of 2002 and middle of 2002. And then I think it was first battalion or third battalion went, and then we went. Yep.
Man, oh man. And you were 2nd Battalion, 20th Special?
Yeah, 2nd Battalion, 20th Group.
Wow.
And one of the interesting things that I remember is when we were getting ready to go, one of the guys from Black Hawk Down, Matt Eversman, he was the main character of Black Hawk Down. He actually was teaching, I think, at one of the local colleges, and he came up to our unit one day, and while we were drilling, and he gave a big lecture on everything what happened in Mogadishu, and all the lessons that he learned, and tips and things like that. And he hung out with us pretty much the whole day, and it was really neat to see him and to hear his stories. Yep, so that was pretty cool.
I bet that was. I mean, that.
Yep.
Yeah, that recent that new documentary on Netflix, Surviving Black. I think it's Surviving Black Hawk Down. Fantastic, and most of the guys and several guys that haven't ever spoke before were on there. And God, yeah, no better person to let you know what it's like, what's coming than him.
Yep. He
Oh,
said you can never carry enough magazines for ammunition. He said, make sure you take your water with you and your night vision goggles and extra batteries.
Ain't that the truth? They learned that the hard way.
Yep.
Yeah. And once you guys are there and getting ready, are y'all getting feedback of who either y'all are going to be replacing or where you're going to be going to set up, so to speak, or
not
the
really
gameplay?
Not really at this time. We were still getting all of our equipment. Most of the equipment that we had at that time was the stuff that we had back in the 80s and the 90s. So we had a couple guys in our unit that had contacts with some equipment manufacturers. SOTEC was a brand new company that just started, and those guys wanted to come out and trial some of their equipment, which we looked at and we made changes, and they actually sold us body armor sets. And we had really good prices on that. We bought soft body armor, and then we bought the plate carriers and the vests with all the pouches and everything on them. And that was brand new at the time. Nobody really had that stuff. So SF was just going to that. So the Army hadn't issued that at all. We still had the spear systems, and we had just regular LBEs that we were using. So that was brand new. So a lot of guys bought that. I bought that set, and we had another guy that came out for knife fighting, and he taught us knife fighting. And we had a guy that was making knives in Florida. His name was Dale Sandberg, and he made special knives for us. So, and I actually have the one knife here. So it was a Dale Sandberg special knife. It was called a Crowley knife, and Jack Crowley was the guy that made the knife. So it has the skull crusher on it on the back, and the knuckle guard on the front, and a double-edged 8-inch blade. So this is the knife that I carried in Afghanistan.
Man, oh man, I think I was seeing your loadout photo. Is this what you were speaking of? Y'all's
yes,
kit?
That's the SOTEC gear that we used. So that vest carried 11 30-round magazines, 2 frag grenades, the M9 pistol with 3 or 4 extra mags. I had the GPS, which we all purchased, was a Rhino 120 GPS, and our commo guys loaded that with Afghanistan, Middle East maps and everything for us. We had a flashlight, extra batteries. I had goggles for the dust. I probably had some extra batteries in there, and just the regular things like that I carried on my person. I always carried a dust rag. You had to have a dust rag because the dust over there was just crazy. So, but we'll get into that later.
I've seen photos, the moon dust and
Yep, moon
everything.
dust, exactly. Yep, that was some of my other gear that I carried. Another 6 or 8 magazines, a couple more grenades, the night vision goggles, some food, signal flares, maps, chem lights, 2-quart canteen of water, more batteries and stuff like that. Yep.
Boy, I bet that got to be weighing pretty heavy.
It did. It weighed about 54 pounds loaded. That vest did. And then underneath of that, we had soft body armor, which was Spectra. And I wore that vest underneath of that body armor. And I wore that every day while I was there. So that whole setup cost about $3,000 that I had to pay out of pocket. So everybody in our unit was spending a lot of money to get ready for this deployment. A lot of guys spent double that. The commo guys spent even more because they were buying their own radios and Multor headsets and stuff like that. So some people bought special blast-proof boots and things, and plus this SOTEC body armor and the vest and all that. So people spent probably $5,000 or $6,000 per person to get ready. And that's because the Army, the stuff that they had and issued was junk. It wasn't suited to what we needed. And I think at the time, National Guard was always considered a second-rate force. And at that time, we didn't get all the good equipment. So, but once we deployed and they found out how good we were, we got everything we needed on the subsequent deployments. So,
man, that how about? And I noticed you've had the varying weapons and such. So how did y'all do with weapons in the National Guard units?
We had the M4s, which was the standard M4 rifles. We also had, I think we had gotten rid of the M21 sniper rifles and went to the bolt action 308 sniper rifles, and then we also got the 50 caliber Barrett machine sniper rifles too. So
wow,
some of the things that we got. Yep.
Beast of a weapon.
A lot of guys actually had uppers, and they had the short barrels. So they had the 8-10 inch barrels on them, and they took those with them and just swapped them out. We also had 2 or 3 silencers per team. We didn't have enough for everybody, but some people got the silencers too.
Were y'all having to get those as well out of pocket?
No, they were issued. The silencers were issued. So, and then we had the M9 pistols. Everybody had an M9 pistol. So,
man.
And then we had the 240 Bravo machine guns and the 249 SAW machine guns. So, and then 50 cals and Mark 19 full auto grenade launchers. Yep.
Where did you guys end up going for that first deployment over to Afghanistan?
So when we got activated for the deployment, we actually spent a few months back in Maryland getting everything ready. So I volunteered to be activated. I think I got my orders in December of 2002 or November 2002. So we did all the train ups. We got all of our equipment. We had to get all the medical supplies. I had to do inventories. So all that had to happen before we actually got activated. And then when we got activated, we went to Fort Bragg. So we left Maryland. We got on a bus, drove down to Fort Bragg, and then we stayed at Fort Bragg for our in-processing. And that took maybe a couple weeks with all the physicals. And then we did the PT test and weapons quals and all that stuff. And then once all that was done, then we got on a plane and flew to, I think it was where was it? It was Fort Polk, Louisiana. So once we get to Fort Polk, Louisiana, that's where we did our train up for the active Army to come to certify all of our teams. So at that time, they put me on I think it was a Chicago team. So I was on that team, and it was a team that was supposed to go in to look for like down pilots and do search and rescue and stuff like that. So they wanted to have a physician on that team. So I went to that team, trained up with them, did all the pre-missions and everything. And some of the other teams were direct action teams or PRU team, like provisional reconstruction teams and reconnaissance teams. So each team had a different mission. So I was on that team and trained up with them. And then I think after all that, we finished up and then we went to Uzbekistan. So we flew from Fort Polk to Uzbekistan to K2, which was called Karshik and Sadabad. And that was in Uzbekistan. So once I get to Uzbekistan, that team that was doing that rescue missions, they found out that there was another team already in country doing the same thing. So they didn't need that team anymore. So they pulled me off of that team and put me on to 2050, which was a B team, as the medical officer for the B team. So I was ready to deploy with 2050. We did all of our train up again. We got all of our equipment, and we stayed at K2 for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then we flew into Afghanistan. And I went to Kandahar with the B team. So I set up a detachment there, medical station. And once I was in Kandahar, I think 7th group was leaving, and they were looking for an officer to sign for their medical supplies, all their drugs and stuff. So they pulled me off of the B team with 2050, and then I went over to 7th group and had to sign for their entire medical clinic. And I had to sit there and count all the pills, all the morphine pills, all the narcotics. So I had to do that for like a day, and then sign for all the narcotics until 3rd group guys came in. So they came in about a week later, and then I had to sit there and tell them they had to sit there and count all the stuff, and they signed for everything. So I got out of that duty. So once I'm sitting there with 3rd group guys, and they said, "Man, you're a PA," and I said, "Yeah." He says, "Our PA is not coming for another couple weeks." And they said, "Well, why don't you go and deploy with one of the 3rd group teams that's going out?" So they put me on ODA 362, which was a 3rd group team. So I had to go meet that team and check in with those guys, and we did a little train up and this and that. And from there, I went with them to, I think it was Firebase Gecko. So that's where I deployed. That's Firebase Gecko there. And those guys stayed at Firebase Gecko for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then they moved to another Firebase from there.
And yeah. Were y'all doing training? Are these?
Yeah, those are
militiamen or
yes, yep. The Mobile Reconnaissance Force, I think they were called. Yep, and that was their patch that they wore.
Gives off the old Mike Force vibe from Vietnam there.
Exactly.
And there you've got a lot of great pictures and everything, and I know from one of your photos, and I'm not sure if it was on this tour, but did you end up getting into mixing it up and earning a Valor Award, a Bronze Star?
Bronze Star, yes, and also Army Commendation Medal and V. And some other awards too. Yep. So once I went to Firebase Spin Bulldog with the 3rd group team, then I left there and went back to Gardez Firebase, which was in northeast. Yeah, about northeast of Afghanistan. I think it was around the capital. So I was with that team. And that was the team that I was in the firefight with, and that was ODA 2056. And they were assigned to a provisional reconstruction team. So our mission was basically to watch this provisional reconstruction team, to go out to the villages and gather intelligence and look for bad guys while we were watching them. And then after they would leave, then we would go back in and take out the bad guys. And look for them, and that's when we got into the one ambush the one night. So, and basically it was we had known that they were coming in from Pakistan through a route that wasn't used for anything else other than infiltrating Taliban and Al-Qaeda. So we drove into Pakistan from the Afghanistan side and came in behind them. And we traveled through this narrow pass with a stream, and it was huge rock walls on both sides, like hundreds of feet high. So we came in through this pass. We were driving about 10, 12 hours. We finally got out of the ravine. And once we got into the open desert, they ambushed us. So it was about 30 Taliban fighters that ambushed us that night. So it was about 10:30 at night, and we were in 2 Toyota pickup trucks. No armor, nothing, just Toyota pickup trucks. We had 3 guys in the first truck and 3 guys in my truck. So it was myself and a driver, and I had an interpreter in my truck. So we're driving through. We just got out into the open desert, and they launched 2 RPGs at us and opened up with full automatic machine guns and RPKs. The first RPG missed the first truck. That truck took off and got out of the kill zone. The second RPG blew up in the front of my truck, and we went off the road into a ditch. The driver hit his head on the steering wheel, and he was out. And the interpreter in the back was yelling and screaming on the floor. And I look out the window. I had my night vision goggles on. And I look out the window, and there's 3 or 4 Taliban guys running up, shooting their guns at me. So I had pulled out my M4 and shot those guys right away. And I'm yelling to the driver to try to get the truck started. And he finally gets the truck started, and he pulls out his M9, shoots a couple rounds out the window at the guys from his side. And then he opens the car door up to get his M4 because it was down in the side, and the dome light comes on in the truck. And basically the dome light comes on, so I take my hand, I smashed out the dome light. And once the dome light gets smashed out, then they start firing at us again. They fired another RPG at us, which missed. And then basically we get the truck started, and the truck goes out of the kill zone. And hold on a minute, this dog. Barney. So once we get out of the kill zone, they fired another RPG at us. So it was like 3 of them that were fired at us. And we finally got out of there and linked up with the other truck. So it was pretty intense. Yeah.
From the write-up, it looks like did you have OGA people with you and
no, it wasn't any OGA. It was just all of our team, and then we had the interpreter with us.
Okay.
So it was only 5 of us and an interpreter. Yep.
Man, oh man, gosh.
Yeah.
That so with y'all having the 2 trucks, I mean, was your truck drivable out? Did y'all have to get in the one to get back to base?
Yeah, we got out. We had a lot of holes. I had holes through my rucksack in the back. We had holes in the truck in the back. There was a couple holes from bullets, and then we had a hole in the radiator from the RPG and stuff like that. So we actually linked up with the first truck. They did a flashlight that we saw in the distance, and I told the driver to drive towards the light, and we took off. I gave him my MVG so he could see, and we linked up with the other truck, and they called in the A-10 fighters from Kandahar that were over top of us within a half an hour, and the QRF from our fire base linked up with us, and I think about another 2 hours later. So once we got out of there, we stopped at this compound. There was an abandoned compound, and I grabbed my rucksack, my Go Ruck, and changed out my extra magazines and reloaded all my magazines in my vest. I had fired like 5 30-round magazines in that little engagement there. Yep.
Boy, that's a hairy one to be a part of, and thank God y'all got out of there with that ambush being well, I mean,
I'm just
unsuccessful.
They weren't very good shots. So we were a lot better shooting than they were.
Lord have mercy, man. And how far into the tour was this? Was this nearing the end, or was this?
No, it's about in the middle, right in the middle.
About the middle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. Did was this a basic? was this a normal route you guys were taking throughout
And that was
the
first time ever
time
in that direction. Yep. Yep. We came up behind them. I guess they knew, because pretty much when we were driving through there, we would see people and they would have radios and cell phones. So I'm sure they told them that we were coming. So they had time to prepare for us.
Man, oh man.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise. Thank the Lord y'all got out of there and got back to base. Man.
Yeah.
So what when y'all aren't out and about and running gun battles, what are y'all out doing medcap missions with villages, or what are y'all strictly doing combat?
I was mainly doing combat arms with those teams. Our unit did do a couple med caps and stuff, and whenever I go into a village or whatever, I do a mini med cap. So they would always find out that I was a doctor or a physician, and they would send all the people and say, hey, can you see these people? So by the time I'm leaving, I had like 30 or 40 people all the time that wanted to see the doctor. So I had a big bottle of Flintstones vitamins. So I'd give them all a Flintstone vitamin, listen to their heart and their lungs, and say, you're cured. And they would go on their way very happy.
Man, oh man. That's
really nothing I could do for them out of an aid bag.
No.
And I didn't want to waste all my supplies on the Afghan civilians.
Yeah, knowing what was lurking around every corner for y'all, you definitely gonna need your supplies. That's for sure.
Yes.
Man. So was there any more significant dust ups or incidents on this trip overseas for you guys, or?
There was other incidents towards the end of the deployment. I had moved back to one of the 2070, which was another B team, and while I was with that B team at I think it was at Firebase Gecko again. So when I was with them, they got a contact that there was an A team that was in a firefight up in Spin Bulldog. So we all got our gear together and we jumped in our trucks and we drove to Spin Bulldog. And at that time, third group it was one of their teams and one of our teams that were up there. So Colonel Reeder, who was the battalion commander, third group at the time, I drove with him in his truck on his 50 caliber machine gun. So it was the sergeant major driving, Colonel Reeder in the driver's passenger seat, and I was on the 50 cal machine gun. And we drove for about 16 hours to get up to that team straight. So we'd stop and just put fuel in our trucks and take a piss and get right back on the road. It was a whole caravan of us that drove up there. And it was interesting because I didn't know. It's like they came and found me and they said the Colonel Reeder wanted me in his truck. And I was like, really? And he says, yeah, he heard about your ambush and he said he wants you in his truck. So I get there and I find out, I said, hey, Colonel Reeder, how you doing? I'm Captain Benner. And he says, oh yeah. He says, get up on that 50 cal. You know how to use that. And I said, I sure do. So I rode the 50 cal machine gun the whole way up on that trip.
That's pretty awesome. The old man knew of your exploits at least.
Yeah. So I saw him years later. He was like a 2-star general down at Fort Bragg. I ran into him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, is what kind of trucks? I was curious. I've seen this trucks in a few pictures with the Desert Corps. The Germans.
Yeah, they had the German GSG-9 unit there that came with us on a couple missions. They weren't even supposed to be in country, much less in combat. So, but they came out with us a lot on some of our missions. So we got to play around with their weapons and stuff. And I think I was shooting one of their grenade launchers there. It's a semi-automatic revolving grenade launcher.
Man, that is too cool. I thought that camo looked a little bit different. Some of the guys looked a bit European, shall we say.
And their trucks were air conditioned too.
Of course, the Germans gotta go in style.
Yes. Yeah, I'm right down there in the front on the right over this way. Yep, right there. That's me. Yep. So
that's a great photo. And were the majority of these guys, I mean, not to say y'all are old, but I mean, some
Yeah, everybody
y'all
was
look to be
probably,
seasoned.
yeah, we're all probably in our 30s or 40s. Yep. We were much older, I think, than the active duty guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
That guy definitely looks like he's been around the
Yeah,
block.
he's one of the team sergeants. Yeah.
There we go then.
Mhm.
Would you say a lot of the 20th group guys had prior active duty group experience, or
Yes. Yes. Most people did. They came from active duty groups. And I'd say it was about half and half. But the thing that made up with our guys, most of the guys in our teams had real jobs. I mean, I was a physician assistant. I did neurosurgery and emergency room. We had other guys that were ATF agents. We had guys that were firefighters, electricians, uh, plumbers. I mean, all those skills were so useful in that environment because we go into a camp, we need electric. We had an electrician on our team. He would run all the lines and hook it all up for us. And here I am. I was a physician, and I could take care of anything that happened. We had another guy who's an ATF guy that knew all about explosives and things like that. So we had a lot of experience that the active duty teams didn't have. So that was the big advantage of using National Guard guys.
yeah, I mean, besides being special forces trained and such as that, they've got a whole other career field
Yes.
that adds on to y'all's skill capacity, shall we say? That's pretty
Yeah.
daggone cool right there.
Yeah.
Man, I yeah, I can see why the National Guard groups did quite well early on with all this experience you guys had, man. Um, and this 23 tour or 23 2003 brain
Mhm.
fart. Are y'all how long are tours at this point in time for you
It
guys?
was a
12
year.
months?
It
Year?
was 12 months. Yep. So we were in country a good 6, 7 months, and then we had a couple months before and a couple months after. So
Wow.
it was a year deployment. Yes.
What's the protocol for you guys? Have y'all set up enough to where a new team is coming in to replace y'all, or are y'all leaving and then another team comes in, or
No,
that's not y'all's.
we had like a handoff where
Okay.
when new team would come in and hang out with us for like a week or two, and then we'd leave and they would take over. Yep.
Kind of get the lay of the land from y'all and figure out what's going on.
Yep. Yep.
Very cool. Wow. And that was another 20th group coming to replace y'all.
Uh, I think it was 23. It might have been first or third battalion, or it might have been a seventh group or another fifth group or something. But I know somebody actually came in. So yep.
Wow,
Yeah.
very interesting. And that's so cool, interchanging like that with the National Guard like that. You guys being one like that, that's very cool. I've like I said, I've got a lot to learn still on the National Guard units, but that's
Yeah.
very cool.
So yeah. So
What what's going on here as y'all begin to get ready to call it a tour on that one?
so I was still up in Spin Bulldog at that big battle that we were having up there. So after that was finishing up, they actually called me back to Kandahar. So I had to wait for a helicopter to come in. And during that time, I saw a couple casualties. We called in a lot of airstrikes up there, and there was a lot of firefights and stuff. And we found one wounded Taliban guy who was crawling down a road, and he had his whole backside of his buttocks blown off. And I treated him, and we called in a medevac to come and get him out. And I think after he left, I stayed another couple days waiting for another helicopter or whatever to come, and they never sent any more helicopters. So I had to drive back with the unit because they didn't want me to leave because I was pretty much the only medical guy there. So I wound up having to stay another week or so before I got back to Kandahar and then pack up all my stuff. And then took me another week to get a flight to Uzbekistan from Kandahar with all my gear and everything. And I finally get back to Uzbekistan. And by that time, the team that I was with, the 2020 ODA 2056, was actually back at Uzbekistan. They were getting ready to go back to Fort Bragg. So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to go with them. And they said, well, you haven't done all your out processing stuff. And I said, well, how long does it take? Oh, it takes about a week. And I said, nah, I'm going to do it in like 2 days. So I went through and ran through and got it done in 2 days. And I left with 2056. So it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Man, oh man, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten to ask this question because it was early in the war. I might as well pull up the photo. There's a great photo, a really up close photo of future President Hamid Karzai. Did you meet him or come across him on this tour?
We actually, when I was with 2056, one of our missions, we went to a compound, and they said they had a surprise for us, and President Karzai shows up, and we actually had lunch with him, and I actually got to shake his hand, and he met all of our teammates and stuff. Yep. So I did get to meet President Karzai.
Wow, that's pretty dadgum cool. I mean, considering his history and everything, still pretty cool like that. Was he on his? I mean, I imagine, is this when Dev Grew and all them were still running PSD because
I think they were
trying to assassinate him before he made it to.
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
So it was fun. It was funny because we'd meet with all these warlords and presidents and this and that, and they'd said, "Okay, you guys got to leave all your guns in your trucks." So we always put an M9 down our shirt, down our pants, and we had a hand grenade in our pocket. So I didn't go anywhere unarmed over there.
No, I can see why. You would probably have to be crazy to do that.
Yep, and pretty much everybody did the same thing.
Man.
Yeah.
And I mean,
I have one other funny story with my knife. When I was over there, I had the snap break off on here. So we were in downtown Kandahar, and no, we were in Kabul, and we were getting motorcycles or something from a local place in Kabul. So outside of the place, there was this little shack on the side of the road, a little wooden shack, and there was a guy in there who was a cobbler. And I go over to him with the interpreter, and I got all my gear on and stuff. And I pull out my knife, and everybody runs away because I got my knife in my hand. The interpreter, I hand him the sheath, and I say, "Can you fix this?" And the guy, like through the interpreter, says, "Yeah." So he takes the sheath, and he puts all these nails in there and fixes the little strap for me. And he hands it back to me, and I tell him thank you. And I said, "How much do I owe you?" And through the interpreter, the guy says he doesn't want anything. He says, "Thank you for saving his country," and this and that. So I had a dollar bill in my wallet. It was my only US dollar bill. So I pulled it out, and I told the interpreter to please give him this dollar bill for fixing this sheath. And he gave him the dollar bill, and the guy was like so happy. So he was like amazed that he had a dollar bill. So I'm getting ready to turn around and walk away, and he takes this blanket off that he was covered with, and he was a double amputee from the knees up. So he pushes himself onto this little wheeled cart, and he wheels himself across the street into a business. And a couple minutes later, I was back at the truck, and I'm watching, and he comes out of the business with a big stack of flatbread and a jug of water. And he wheels himself back across the street to the little wooden shack, goes inside the shack and closes the doors. And he was set. He had his food and his water with that dollar bill, and he probably had change left over.
Wow, man, that's heartwarming beyond. I mean, the only interactions you can get from being in the situation and place you were in at that point in time. I mean, God, what a beautiful story. And I didn't even think about it being this early on. Were y'all, besides fighting AQ, were y'all still fighting the Taliban and the warlords and such?
Yes, we had a lot of interactions with the warlords. We went one night, we met with the warlord, and he had a big dinner for us. And we were all sitting in this compound, and they brought out this plastic mat, and they put it out on the ground, and they went through and they put all the food out on the mat. We all sat down, and ate. And the thing you have to remember, you can't eat all the food on the mat. So you always have to leave food left on the plate. So at the end of the meal, they would roll up the mat with all the food and they would take it outside, and all the people outside would eat what you left over. So they wouldn't waste any of that food. So they would all eat all the stuff that you left. So that was sort of respectful, that you wouldn't eat it all. So you give it to them. So that night we stayed in that compound, and I stayed there next to a friend of mine, Mike Humphreys, who was a weapons guy. And middle of the night, he kicks me, he wakes me up, and he says, "Doc, Doc, Doc." And I like wake up and I pull my headlight on and I'm looking, and next to him was this little closet, and it had all these boxes and crates and stuff. So during the night, he heard something ringing, and it was a cell phone. So he jumps up and he looks and he opens the box up, and there was a cell phone on a 155 millimeter howitzer shell, and it was rigged to detonate. So it didn't go off for who knows. I mean, I'm so glad it didn't go off, because we would have just been incinerated. We would have never woken up. So he pulled the phone off of it, and he's like really upset. He's like yelling. He says, "We got to get out of here. We got to get out of here." So we grabbed the crate and we pulled it. We threw it on the truck. We woke everybody up, and we got out of there as fast as we could before everybody knew what was going on. And once we got back, we told them what happened. But that shell would have went off, and we would have just been incinerated. So, and Mike Humphreys never forgot that. When we got back to Maryland that September, he was having problems, and between Christmas and New Year's, he shot himself in the head, killed himself.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
Terribly sorry to hear that.
Yep. So he had a wife and a little daughter at the time.
Yeah. Did that guy, did they lure y'all in, and were they there to go with y'all, or did they leave the house?
I think they left, because when we left, there was nobody there. So they knew they were going to take us out. So yeah, because there was nobody left in that compound, and that thing was ringing, and it just didn't go off for some. Thank God it didn't go off. Yeah.
Boy, you talk about a man, oh man. That
was another close call. I had another one where they had put an improvised explosive device next to our building, our commo shed, medic shed, and that didn't go off. Luckily, we found it. The wind blew the sand off of it, and we saw it and disarmed that one too. That was a couple times like that. So
that IED threat is just terrifying. I mean, terrifying.
There was another time we were driving through the desert, and the mountains were up in the distance, and we saw all these little glints of light, like mirrors. So we're driving, and we see all these mirrors, and they're like glinting at us and this and that, and we're thinking, man, they're probably setting up some kind of ambush or whatever. So we're driving through the desert, and we finally get up to the base of the mountains, and we found a road, and we go up to the road, and there's a village up there, and they all come running out of the village, and the interpreter jumps out, and he says they have a big party for us, and they're so happy that we made it through the huge Russian minefield alive. We had driven an hour and a half through this minefield, and they were trying to warn us with the lights to turn back. And so now they have a trail that they can go through this minefield because we drove through it. And it was just after 2 hours of driving through a minefield. Yeah, and luckily we didn't hit any.
Yeah. Holy Lord! I mean,
there are pickup trucks too. Yeah. So
that is pucker factor inducing even now. Hearing that is terrifying. God Almighty. Yeah. that was a heck of a trip. It sounds like. My gosh. So when go ahead, I'm sorry.
I have a lot of stories like that. It was another time I was flying on a helicopter, CH-54 or no, CH-47 Chinook with the two propellers. And me and another guy are in the back, and it's full of boxes. I mean, all the supplies. It was a ring run for I was going out to another fire base. So I got all my gear in there, and I'm sitting there and just sort of hanging out. And I look down, and there's a king cobra slithering in the helicopter. And it was like a 6-8 foot long king cobra that slithered right over my feet. And I like looked down. I couldn't believe I was seeing a real cobra. So I jumped up on top of the seat, and I'm holding up onto the seat, and I like got the other guy up on the seat, and we're trying to get the crew chief to let him know that there's a snake in the helicopter. So it went inside of a box, and we're waiting, and we're looking for the snake, and it comes out on the other side, and we're flying for like 2 hours on this helicopter with the snake in the back, a king cobra. So we finally land, and everybody jumps out of the helicopter. They didn't even shut it down. The snake comes out of the side of the helicopter, and the crew chief had a machete. So I like waved my arms, and the snake looks at me, and he hit it with the machete, and we took out the snake. Yeah, but could you imagine that, going through all that and then get bit by a king cobra?
I am definitely afraid of snakes, and much less a king cobra. Boy, I would have been screaming and yelling. They would have heard me over both of those rotors up above. I mean, holy crap!
Yeah.
Man, you do have some stories. Good Lord. Oh man. So with this wrapping up, do you are you staying with 20th Group to go back to start training up for another deployment? Or
well, once we left Uzbekistan, we went to Germany. We hung out in Germany for a day, and then we flew back to Maryland. And the day before, I was in that big firefights and all that action in Chopin, and then it was my birthday on the 15th of September. So I left there on the 15th, and I got back on the 15th of September because of the time zones. So I got back on my birthday, and I was combat one day, and the next day I'm back in Maryland. I mean, that quick, 24 hours later. So, yep. So they gave us a leave. I think we had like a 3-week leave, and then we came back to the unit, and then we had to go back to Fort Bragg to do our out processing. And that was a couple more weeks down there, and then we were back in Maryland. We were done. Yep.
So. What is the process what is the out process?
It was basically they did your physical, they did hearing tests. I mean, they did turn in of equipment and all your plates and things like that, and basically all that kind of things. And then once you get back to Maryland, then I think we had like 2 or 3 months off, and then we started drilling again. And I stayed with B Company for another, I think, a year or so. And then I transitioned from B Company to the detachment. And 2nd Battalion Detachment 2 was the training detachment. So I was basically second in command of the training detachment to get new guys ready for the Q course. So it was me and a captain there. And well, actually, he was a warrant officer. So I was a captain at the time. Then I got promoted, I think, to major after that. Yeah, I was major at the time. So I stayed with that training detachment for about 3 or 4 years. It was probably about 5 years. I was with the training detachment, and we trained up enough guys and crazy amount of guys. We had one of the highest pass rates of all the National Guard units in the whole United States. So I got an MSM for that. So, yep. So it was pretty rewarding. So we had made up a program that we would teach them how to do knots and lashing. We had a program where we would do land navigation. We'd give classes, and then we would go out on different land navigation courses for 2 or 3 weekends in a row. And they would do all these courses, and then we taught them about how to build a poncho hooch and survival, and how to pack their rucksacks, how to do foot care, how to do all the basic first aid stuff. So everything that they needed to know for SFAS, we taught them how to do it. So it got to be so great that everybody that went down to that course would pass. And the active Army said that our pass rate was too high, and that we had to stop teaching them all the tricks. So that was the end of that program.
Jeez. And I literally just saw a post the other day about people getting ready for going through selection and the importance on learning knots
Yes.
and tying knots and all of that. And
Lasting.
hearing you say that
Yeah.
is mind blowing to me.
Yeah. My Eagle Scout training with the knots helped out immensely. I taught all the knot classes, all the lashing classes, and I'd been through SFAS, so I knew all the team events, and we made our own team events that mimicked what was going on at SFAS.
No wonder y'all are so good. My God, those guys were lucky to have y'all, man. Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, so I finished up with that for about 4 or 5 years. I did that. Then I got promoted to lieutenant colonel, and I had to leave because I outranked everybody there. The next lowest guy was like a captain and a major. So after I left there, I went to the 29 Combat Aviation Brigade as their flight surgeon. So that's what I did for the last 5 years of my career. And I went to Iraq in 2011 and helped. We closed out all the bases in Iraq and did the phase withdrawal. And I flew every other day as a flight surgeon there. Got an air medal while I was there. So it was pretty neat to fly all over Iraq. Yep.
And is that where being a flight surgeon, is that where you're going and picking up somebody and they're in critical care in the bird and you're rendering aid right there in the bird?
Yep, in the bird, and then taking them to a clinic. Yep. So I did that, and we also transported people and supplies and things and all too. Yep.
Jeez, I bet that was a long day's work and not only long but a very rewarding, because I can imagine the amount of lives that you saved and the people that are still around today because of you and the men you worked with.
It was interesting because there was one other PA, maybe it was 2 PAs and a doctor, and none of those did any of the flight time at all. They didn't want to go outside of the wire at all. So every other day I was taking everybody's flight duty. So I flew every other day. So I'd get up at 1 in the morning. I'd have to walk down to the airfield with all my equipment. And then we'd get on the helicopters, do all the pre-flight checks, load everything up. We'd leave by like 2 or 3 in the morning. We'd fly until we ran out of gas. We'd refuel, and then we'd fly again until we run out of gas and refuel again. And we did that till like 6, 7 o'clock at night. And then I'd get back like 7, 8 o'clock at night, crash, and get up the next day, and then have to do flight clinic. And I would see patients all day till about 3 o'clock, and then crash, and then get up at 1 o'clock in the morning and go do it again. And I did that for like 3 months in Iraq.
It's a wonder you didn't get more air medals than you did being in the bird. That
they only gave out 3 air medals for the entire brigade of 1,500 people, and I was one of them. So they don't give out air medals for hardly anything.
Dang.
3 of them given out, and I was one of them. Yep.
That's crazy, because the SOG guys, I've spoken to several of the Covey and Chase medics that had like 20 or 30 or something.
They don't do that anymore. They changed the requirements on the air medals.
That's
yeah, because you would see a lot of the people with all the little oak leaves and stuff. They don't do that anymore. Nope. You're lucky if you get 1.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yep,
wow.
They do.
So, I mean, you were all over the country then.
Yeah, I was on the western side of Iraq, the eastern side, the north, the south. I went to Baghdad. We flew into the embassy all the time. We would land at the embassy and we'd all get out with our flashlights and look underneath the helicopter for bullet holes, because they were constantly shooting at us while we were coming in and out of the embassy. Yeah.
How big, and I can only imagine it was drastic, but how big of a difference from your tour with 20th from this time with the 29th Combat Brigade?
Totally different. Every deployment is totally different. So you can't compare one to the other. It's like apples and oranges. So the thing with Iraq is it was the end of the deployment. So the mess hall had closed. Pretty much the base was deserted. When we left there was only 89 of us on all of Taji, Iraq. And that was one of the biggest bases in Iraq at the time. I think it had like like 15 or 18,000 troops, and we were 89 people on the whole base.
Jeez.
Yep.
Ghost town.
Yes, it was. And it was funny because they had loaded up all these tractor trailers to drive everything out of Iraq back to Kuwait. And we would get back to Kuwait and the trucks would be empty because people would jump off the bridges in Iraq on the top of the truck, climb down, open the doors up, and throw everything out of the truck. And the drivers were told not to stop. So they would get back to Kuwait and their trucks would be empty.
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is just a madhouse. Just a madhouse.
Crazy. It was absolutely crazy. Yeah.
With you mentioned taking a lot of rounds while flying.
Yes.
I noticed you did night operations. How dangerous was it flying at night in the country?
It was better to fly at night because they couldn't see you to shoot, and if they were shooting, you could see the tracers and avoid them. So it was always better to fly at night. Yeah.
Boy, I bet those tracers coming up were quite a sight, but quite a scary sight as well.
Yes, it was. And we had the chafe on the side of the helicopter, so whenever we got a target lock, it would throw the chafe off. So the chafe, we would constantly have to reload those because we were getting so many target locks, and we don't know what they were from, if they were from surface-to-air missiles or whatever, but they were constantly going off. And whenever those things go off, you could really hear them inside the helicopter, and you were like, oh my God, we're going to get blown up. So, and they would go off all the time.
What exactly is the chafe?
It's like a heat. It's like a flare that goes out. Okay. So it's supposedly send a hot area. So it would, if it's a heat seeking thing, it would go after that instead of hitting the helicopter. Yeah.
Yet another cool little ingenious thing the military has come up with. I always love seeing the side of the jets and the C-130s and all that throwing chafe. That's quite the sight. So you're down to 89 people on that particular base. You said, are you 89? Are y'all tasked with closing this out as your tour ends?
We were the last people off of that camp, and that was December of 11. So we were holed up in a hangar on the side of the airport. And they said they were going to send a plane in for us. So we waited 3 days for a plane to come and get us. And we were like thinking they forgot us. Oh. And they finally sent the plane in, and we all threw all of our gear on that plane, and we got out of there.
Happiest you'd ever seen to see an American aircraft, I can imagine.
Yep. And it was funny because it came in, it was totally dark. The airport was shut down. So that plane came in, landed, and pulled right up to where we were, and we ran out, jumped on it, and closed the bottom, and we flew out. So, yeah.
Jeez. And where did y'all head from there?
From there, we went to Kuwait, and then I stayed in Kuwait for another 3 months or so in a flight clinic in Kuwait. And it was funny because I had the busiest flight clinic there, the busiest practice. I was doing auricular acupuncture in the ears. So the Army had sent me to an Air Force school to learn how to do auricular acupuncture in the ears. And because the pilots couldn't take a lot of medications and still fly, so they wanted to try this acupuncture treatment, and it works. So I had treated over 1,000 people with the acupuncture while I was in Kuwait. So it was pretty amazing.
That is pretty heavy duty. Wow. I've not ever heard of that before, but that is very, very cool. Wow.
Yeah.
And you do that for your last 3 or 4 months in country, and
So it was interesting because I only had enough. There were so many providers in Kuwait that I only had one clinic once a week. So I had like 2 hours in an office once a week. And they would line up all these patients for me to see. It was like every 15 minutes I had a new patient. And so the other 6 days, I watched movies. I went to work out. I went to the gym. I walked around. I just goofed off for like 6 days out of the 7. So I had nothing to do because nothing was going on at the time. Watch movies. I don't know how many hundreds of movies I watched.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So what's it like closing out that base and finally literally closing out a chapter of the
Yeah.
war and leaving?
Yeah, it was quite amazing. I mean, from being in Afghanistan at the beginning of a war to Iraq at the end of the war, I mean, we just stripped everything out of that base, everything that we could possibly take with us, we took with us in Iraq. And it was such a contrast to see what happened in Afghanistan, where they left everything in
Everything.
Afghanistan, and we left nothing in Iraq. So, and to think the people in Iraq could have used it,
Oh
where the
yeah.
people in Afghanistan is going to use it against us instead of
Mm,
with us.
mm,
Yeah,
mm, mm.
yeah.
Where when you end up finally departing Kuwait, where are you headed back to Maryland or
Back to
where?
Maryland. Yeah, came back to Maryland after that, and just stayed with the flight clinic there in Maryland, and basically just closed out my tour with them. Actually, I got active duty for COVID. So I did 6 months for COVID deployment with the Aviation Brigade in Maryland. So I did that. That was the last thing that I did. So I had to go around and do counsel people on COVID vaccinations. And everybody that decided not to take the vaccination got booted out of the Army. So
Jeez, I bet that was
yeah,
a job and a half.
it was. Yeah. So
Man, and that was your last.
that was my last big thing that I did. Yep. Yeah.
Jeez,
Yeah. So
man.
they gave me a humanitarian medal for that.
Oh Lord,
Yeah.
humanitarian award for that. So
Yeah.
when are you? Is it a personal choice, or when do you start deciding that it's
Done.
time to hang up the
Yeah.
gun, so to speak?
I put in for promotion for colonel and got passed over the first time. And I talked to a lot of people and they said, yeah, if you get passed over, you're not going to get it. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to retire as a lieutenant colonel. So I wind up retiring, and like 2 months later, I get a telephone call, and it's the colonel of the aviation brigade, and he says, "Where you been, Colonel Benner? We've been missing you, and we got all these flight physicals, and we need you to do." And I said, "Sir, I retired." He says, "No, you didn't." And I said, "What?" And he says, "You didn't retire. There's no paperwork. There's nothing here that says you retired. So you need to come back and make up 2 drills." So I go back to the aviation company. I make up my 2 drills, and I go look for the guy that I put my retirement paperwork in, and he's gone. He left,
Oh,
and he wiped his computer with all the paperwork on it. So he never submitted any of the paperwork.
of
So
course
then
not.
there's a new person. So I give all my paperwork to this new person. I said, "Look, I want to retire." They said, "Okay, we'll get it ready. But you got to do another couple drills before we get it all ready." I said, "Okay." So I stayed another 2 drills, and I retire, go home, the end of drill, done. So 3 months later, I get a call from the colonel again. He goes, "You know what, Colonel Benner, we can't have you missing these drills like this." And I said, "I retired." He said, "No, you didn't." And I said, "What do you mean I didn't? I've turned into such and such all the paperwork." "Well, there's nothing here that says you retired." So I'm like, "Are you guys screwing with me?" So I go back up to the armory again, and I find the person. They're gone. They never put the paperwork in. So I do it a third time. So this is stretched out over 8 months now before I'm retired. So I put in the paperwork a third time, and I tell the guy, I said, "Look, you don't put this paperwork in, I'm going to come back up here, and you're not going to like it." So he puts the paperwork in. I finally get a paper that says I'm retired. Then the next day I get DA selected for full bird colonel. So they promote. They were going to promote me to full bird colonel, and I retired a week before. So if I would have just stayed another week, I could have gotten promoted to full bird colonel, and I probably would have stayed another 3 years to retire as a full bird colonel. Yeah. So instead, I retired as a lieutenant.
That is the craziest thing I've ever heard,
Yep, that's
and
the kick in the ass. Yep.
I mean they did you so dirty in a way with shenanigans. There, I
Yes.
mean,
Yep.
I'm literally speechless at that, sir. I'm literally speechless. And like one of our guests says right there, that's some OG garbage, OG Army garbage right there. Hold on to your paperwork, boys.
Yep. Yep.
And it's so
I had
regular
all my
though.
paperwork, so it wasn't hard to resubmit it, but I had to resubmit it every time. Yep.
Jeez. So when and not and another week to be in full bird. I mean, so when that comes down, I can only imagine there's probably a few holes in your wall that you had to re-sheetrock over. Uh, but what are you what's next in line for you? Are you going into the private sector here, or what's in
No,
line?
I'm just working a hospital as a first assistant in surgery. So I do orthopedics, general surgery, GYN, Da Vinci surgery machine. So I do all surgeries as a first assistant. So whatever surgeon needs an extra set of hands, I'll go in and help them. So that's what I'm doing now. Yep.
Wow. I
Yep.
mean, that that is. And did you just say the Da Vinci method?
Da Vinci surgery machine. It's a robot computer.
Is that the one to where it's literally the
It has the
machines
arms.
and
Yes, it comes in and does. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
holy cow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That I thought that was it, and I heard it. I was like, I cannot. I've got to ask just to make sure that it actually sounds like, to be honest, sir, it
Mm-hmm.
probably did you better not getting out when you did, and ending
Yeah.
up where you did. To
Yeah.
be honest with you.
Yeah. I'm still retired. I'm still retired reserve, so they can call me back till I'm 60. So I got 4 years. So hopefully they won't call me back.
I was just fixing to say, for the love of God, don't hassle this man
Yeah.
any more than he's already been hassled with paperwork.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And you got just a onslaught here of awards and schools, but I noticed you got your combat medical badge, and
Combat
we,
medic badge.
we've spoken to some SOG medics that like Mr. Joe Parnaw, who wrote the book SOG Medic, and he wanted instead of he actually got both on the chance to get both on the same operation, and they said, what do you want, your CIB or the medic? And he went with the medic badge. He's like, that there you can't, you have to be a medic to get this in combat. Everybody can get the CIB. Is that kind of what you felt as well?
Yes, absolutely. For all the people that got CIBs on the deployment, there was only like 5 of us or 6 of us that got the combat medic badge. So
heavy duty.
A lot less people ever get the combat medic badge than the CIB.
Heavy duty. I like the way they look as well. You don't see, for some reason, you don't see many guys wearing. I can see why you'd be proud of the CIB, but that CMB is very cool. I always like seeing Mr. Joe in his uniform wearing his.
Yes.
So wow. I mean, so you're still in the reserves. Capable of being called up, hopefully not, and you're still working. Are you we speak to some guys that speak to local young kids, either at high schools or whatnot, about the military, or either some guys that got into knife working or metal working or what have you. Are you doing anything like that to talk to young men about the military or anything, or Eagle Scouts maybe?
I'm still involved with scouting. I do that. I go up to the Boy Scout summer camp every year and volunteer as a medic for the camp medics sometimes on the night off, where the medic up there goes and has a night off. So this year is actually pretty special. My daughter, who's an Eagle Scout, is the camp medic for the whole camp. So she's going to nursing school, and she took a job up there for the summer as the camp medic. So I'll be up there with her this summer. And also I'm with the American Legion post here in Haverty Grace, and we have a little museum. One of the curators of the museum at the American Legion post. So every Saturday from 1 to 5, we have our museum open, and we have stories. We have a Vietnam POW that comes every Saturday, and myself, and there's a couple other ladies who her husband was a CIA pilot, and another lady her mother was a nurse in World War II. So we all talk about stuff at the museum. So that's pretty nice. And I collect a lot of military items on my free time too. So, yep.
That's outstanding. It really sounds like you've led a outstanding life, both militarily and your private life. I mean, you are the epitome of a American Special Forces soldier. I mean, it's just quite the resume and outstanding career that you've had. And it's always an honor to get to speak to men like you, veterans and Special Forces veterans. It's just an absolute honor. And I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight and coming on and sharing your story. And is there anything before we get ready to shut down for the evening? Is there anything else you'd like to share, promote, or get word out about, or anything?
I have another friend that I deployed with on that 2003 deployment. His name is Drew Webb, and he just wrote a book. It's called Unbreakable Valor. It's about moral injury, and PTSD, and it's a very good book. And I'm actually in chapter 85 of his book. He writes about one of the stories that I told him about some children that were run over by a SEAL team. And he wrote about that in his book, chapter 85. It's a very good book, Unbreakable Valor by Drew Webb. I highly recommend it. So that's about it.
Do you actually have a photo of you working on these children?
I do. I think I gave you that photo. Yep. So that's me there in the green hat. That boy there died. He had a depressed skull fracture.
God.
We could not save him, so I had to call that, and he passed away. The other boy had fractured ribs and fractured pelvis and lacerations and stuff. We wound up saving him. Yep.
Wow. What? Dang it. I thought I had your other photos that jumped to my Vietnam stuff there. I did have, I did. Here's a more of a several photo look, I should say, at y'all at work here.
Yes.
My God. It's bad enough. I'm working on men. I can only imagine.
Nobody had any experience with children, so I was the only one there coming from an emergency room background. I knew what to do with children. So yep.
There you are again, right place, right time, you being where you needed to be in this situation. I mean, God. And you said his name is Drew Webb, and the book's name is Unbreakable Valor.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was correct, because I will add that into the show notes to where people can see that. It sounds like chapter 85, it sounds like that's got a lot of great stories in it. If it's got that much in it. Yep. So, heck, if Drew would ever be open to coming on and promoting the book, I'd love to have him on to talk about it.
Yep, I'm sure he would.
Well, again, we can't thank you enough for coming on and spending about 2 hours with us tonight. It's been great, and I hate it took us this long to get together, but it was well worth the wait. Fantastic, if I must say so myself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
And thank you guys for joining us, and we'll stay in touch. And by the way, if you would ever like to come back on, we'd love to have you back on to come and talk with us. So you've always got an open platform with us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You have a good night, and I'll be in touch with you.
Okay, great. Thanks.